Hello everyone, and welcome to this series on automating your financial process. In this video, we'll look at how to create a supplier invoice in SAP Business ByDesign. Let's switch over to the system to see how this is done. To create a new supplier invoice, you navigate to the Supplier Invoicing Workcenter. It's possible to create an invoice from scratch by clicking on the New Invoice Without Purchase Order under the Common Task view of the Supplier Invoicing Workcenter, or you click on Invoice Entry to create an invoice based on an existing invoice entry. Invoice entries are created based on purchase orders. As soon as a purchase order is created on the system and it has been released, an invoice entry is created for that purchase order, and therefore you can invoice based on this invoice entry. It's important to note that only invoices that have been delivered, either partially or completely, can be invoiced. And for anyone that has not been delivered, when you try to invoice it, an exception would be created, and therefore the user will have to clarify the exception before you can go ahead with processing the invoice. Approval process can also be configured to handle exceptions. Now, so we currently have an invoice on the system, and then to invoice based on this invoice entry, we select the invoice entry and click New Invoice. We populate the required field with the necessary information. For example, put in the external document ID, the invoice date. You can also see other information that are contained there. Once everything is completed, we click check to ensure that all the fields have been populated. So we can currently see that there are no errors in this invoice entry. Now you can click view all to have an extended view of the invoice. For example, you can configure approval processes on the invoice such that once it is posted, it will go for approval before it's actually posted in your books. Also, on the exception tabs, you can be able to see exceptions that arise as a result of creating the invoice, and you can analyze the exceptions, accept or reject before you'll be able to post the invoice. In the approvals tab, you can see approvals that have been configured, and document flow tab, you can see the end-to-end process of this invoice, which gives you visibility into the entire process. So you can see the purchase order, you can see the delivery that has been carried out. You can also see the invoice. As soon as it is posted, the document number will be generated for the invoice. So I'll just go ahead and post this now. So now the invoice has been posted. So to view the invoice that has been created on the system, we will navigate to the Invoices and Credits memo view of the Supplier Invoicing Workcenter and filter by the invoice ID, or by the external document ID, or the supplier name, as the case may be. So from here we can see the invoice. Now the other option is to create an invoice directly on the system. To do that, from the Supplier Invoicing Workcenter, under the Common Task view, you click New Invoice Without Purchase Order, and then you populate all the required information. For example, your supplier ID, your external document ID, the invoice dates, and also the amount. I'll put in the product here. The product category, okay, you can also select the tax code that's applicable to this purchase. If it's a non-taxable purchase, you can select it as well. The quantity, the unit price, and then for this item you need to specify the account assignment type. And the different account assignment type that are supported we have the cost center, which is to a department. You have the customer contract, but you have to select from the list of existing contracts. You have to an individual material in the case where you are trying to process the invoice for a fixed asset and the system allows you to select from the list of individual materials. You can also create a new one while creating the invoice. And then you have for a project tax, where you want to link this to as an expense to an existing project. We have a sales order, service order, as the case may be. So for this, we're going to assign it to a cost center, and then we need to select our cost center. Then once we're done, we click check to ensure that there are no errors. So I currently have to select the product type. Okay. So I need to also update my total gross amount field. Now once I check it, there should be no error, so we can see document contains no errors, and then we can post it. Alright, thank you very much for your time. To find out more, kindly visit our website www.digitank.ng.com or send a mail to engage@digitank.ng.com. Think ERP, think Digitank.